I will not go into the analysis, but the question I'd like to address, so what do we do? I think we need peace communication strategy, not just press release, not just caravans, not just peace festivals, but real honest-to-goodness peace communication. But if we had more time, probably we can engage in more reflective dialogues. But right now, as always, we are in a tight situation again, so that peace communication becomes troubleshooting. Sana hindi ganun eh. Anong nangyari tuloy yung peace communication natin, troubleshooting. We have to explain so many things in such a short time because there's already a tragedy. You know, para akong sirang plaka, I've been calling for peace communication, but I cannot do it myself because you need the whole team, and it should be in coordination with those who are in the formal peace talks like track one. But again, I'd like to propose concrete actions towards peace communication, but in this tight situation, we may need to employ some strategies and technologies of social marketing. How do you sell peace? In this tight situation, between now and the delayed approval of a revised or enhanced BBL. So definitely there's a delay in the BBL approval. And how do you manage this delay? Now I'd like to jump to a quick comparison. 1 or 2 weeks before the papal visit of Pope Francis, we had a serious warning. The chaos in Quiapo Nazareno pilgrimage procession. It was chaos. And people were afraid, my God, baka yung pagdalaw ni Pope Francis maging as chaotic as the Quiapo Nazareno pilgrimage. What did they do? There was strong coordination between government and the church. They employed artists and actresses on TV saying, "Huwag kayong magtutulakan, simple lang, ganyan." And it turned out well. There was strong between the chaos of Nazareno to the relative order and the safety and security during the Pope Francis visit. What was in between? A good communication strategy. Now we need to do that. Where am I coming from? Well, I was born in Cagayan de Oro, and my father was from Bulacan. They met in Wao, and the first Mindanao term I heard from my father was pagari, and he told me he had lots of Muslim friends and pagari. So in a way, mistizo ako. I was born in Cagayan de Oro, but I grew up in Bulacan. But beyond that, I've been to consult Mindanao, Dialogue Mindanao, and more recently in the Zamboanga siege, where my namesake, kamukha ko daw si Commander Malik. But I take note, what do you mean by peace communication? Basically, my thesis is peace communication is the bridge between track 1 and track 2. We have to bridge between the confidentiality and technicality of the formal peace talks with winning people's confidence in the whole peace process. At the end of the day, as Senator Gingona would say, the last thing we need is a good, well-crafted legal document, but rejected by the people simply because we failed to communicate effectively with them. And I agree with Benny. That portion has been neglected. There are many artists with songs, but we don't propagate their songs for peace. Kulang. Peng Mangansakan wants to produce a film that's not funded. And yet we spend a lot on bullets and armaments. We don't have a place for artists, for composers, for filmmakers, for educators, for explainers. For those who have faces that are credible in explaining, those who have the language to talk to the Lumans, to the Takusugs, to the MNLF, to those who are bereaving. And parang the emphasis is on the technical language. Mahirap eh. Now even I push for this. because we need sensitivity to communication. As I often say, at the heart of conflict is miscommunication. Sabi ni Jalia, so parang marriage. Ngayon, kasawa na tayo, magligawan tayo ulit. The sensitivity to peace communication also demands that we need to learn how to identify communication expressions. I would like to put in this statement that violent acts are also forms of communication. Those who engage in violence, we say these are expressions of anger or hatred, mostly expressions of pain. Violent acts many times are expression of a message na I want you to feel my pain. And if the only way for you to feel my pain is to hurt you, sorry, but I want to tell you something. So, in a way, violence itself is a form of communication. Probably we don't agree with that. Maybe we can say there are other forms of communication. Words, yeah, but even words. When we label people, when we shout at them, you're saying you're a failure in front of the camera, that could also be violent. And so words not bullets, can also be violent, but at the same time, violent acts can also be a form of communication if we are ready to listen to the message. And so the problem is if the forms of communication are planned by those who have evil intentions, and those who have peaceful messages do not plan, do not strategize on how to communicate peace messages. Parang silang plaka, I've been calling for peace communication, pero kulang talaga. Now, what would we like if we plan some peace communication strategy? I know those who are against Pinoy, they have a communication strategy. Step down, and we'll have a transition government. You can detect it. On the first week, sabi nga ni Tina Montiel kahapon, first week, the keyword was MILF. Second week, Mamasapano. Third week, Pinoy. Blame Pinoy. There is a whole machinations here. There's a whole in some of these chambers, some people, some groups are planning a communication strategy that are more effective than peace caravans. Now, because of this, a few years ago, 2 years ago, I approached Secretary Mon Jimenez. He didn't know me, I just tried. But he accepted me. We had coffee in Rockwell. I said, you developed the tagline, it's more fun in the Philippines. And it became viral, unlike Pilipinas kay ganda. How did you do that? I said, there's a technology to that. It's not just bara-bara na magsisigaw ka lang all out peace. Meron technology dyan, FGD, etc. So sabi niya, what are your concerns? Well, if we can employ the technology for selling another shampoo, for selling peace in Mindanao, your tourism will be better off. Diba? Yeah, but so what are your messages? Well, people, according to our consultations, people don't even know how to distinguish MNLF and MILF. There are informal economy of conflict. People are selling guns and literally making a killing out of expanding conflict, etc., human trafficking, etc. He said, Paring Bert, let me lecture to you. In social marketing, in marketing in general, the first rule is you can make people feel one feeling at a time. Is that so? And then I thought of all the cacophony of NGO messages na, ganito, human rights, transitional justice. And after a while, people don't know where to start and what's the key message. And apparently, it's very difficult. It requires a whole technology of FGD and research and survey and testing and the use of colors and fonts, etc., and looking at the proper voices. And so I said, so what would be required? Well, form a team, but the team should be well supported. You know, you need some money, you need some surveyors, some research people, creative people. Though maybe an FGD would include the coffee drinking youth who don't know anything about Mindanao, or an old soldier, a retired general who can show his scars and would still say, let there be peace. Maybe a widow of the South and saying she's ready to forgive, whatever. Then we can probably draw out some key messages. So, and then follows. And then I also talked to Ned Roberto, who is the guru in social marketing in terms of audience segmentation. If you have a message, don't just put in a press release. Because a press release, especially written in English, published in Inquirer, can only be read, very browsed by the readers of Inquirer, etc. Now, how do you explain your message to the island provinces in Basilan, Sulu-Tawi-Tawi, who are more familiar with MNLF? How do you explain this to Iloilo, whose Ilonggo constituencies are actually supporters of Ilaga? You have to package your message a little differently to the Muslims, the Maranaos and the Magindanaos and the Tausugs here in Quiapo and their neighbors in Green Hills. So it needs a whole strategy. But when I call for communication, give us your message, we'll write the press release. Now the whole SEA is 1,300 or 500 schools. Suppose in this month they get interested in seminars, they would allow, budget 1.5 hours. A teacher, what will the teacher do and what materials can he use to generate insights and discussion in 1 hour? Do we have a ready-made PowerPoint presentation? What do you say before presenting it? What questions do you ask after showing it? And what handouts can be distributed to high school students, to parishioners, etc.? Now, the Catholic segment is itself a most important segment because that is also the custodian and repository of biases. We have to address that. Now, how do you communicate this to Celso Lobregat and the Chabacano community? So, we need a whole strategy, and it requires some support, some funds. And right now, I wish we had more time and change the textbooks, etc. But right now, we need a little bit more to act a little bit more quickly, and probably we need a different kind of technology. So, I would like to follow, for example, the 4 P's of social marketing. Number 1, you need a product. What is your product or message? Is your message, for example, trust Pinoy? And even if you don't trust the MILF, trust Pinoy because the Pinoy trust E.I. Coronel, and E.I. Coronel attests that the MILF can be trusted. Is that okay? Ganun ma? Now, if that is our main message, then let's push it. Right? Or all-out peace. Now, one lesson that I picked up is a message should have a behavioral demand. Halimbawa sabihin mo, this shampoo makes your hair not just shiny, but soft. That means buy this. Then, when I go to the shopping mall, then I see this color, then I buy it. So, there's a behavioral component there. Now, I know these things have to be nuanced, but I'm just saying there are steps that we can follow, learning from those who would be ready to spend 10,000 pesos per second airing 15-second advertisement for the sake of a shampoo or a new soap. Knowing the impact of this kind of messaging, they are ready to pay 10,000 pesos per second during prime time. Now, product. So we need a key message. Well, maybe a narrative, maybe a dream. Are you focusing on the past or the future? So do you need a professor to explain the history? Or you need a young person who would say, we have a dream? So, what is our message? Just acknowledge. Just pure, kahit yun man lang, acknowledgement of one's faults on both sides. Maybe that's yung bang pagkilala at pagtanggap na meron din akong mali kahit na nasaktan din ako. Yun ba? Pwede na ba yun? Forgiveness, trust, patience. Okay? Now, second, after product is publics. We need a better understanding of the target audiences. Madalas, nag-meeting tayo English. Bakit? Meron international guest eh. Yeah. Sometimes, di ba? Meron ba tayong guest dito taga-Isla, taga-ano? Mahirap. Anyway, the Catholics, especially the prejudiced Catholics, would form probably the biggest block in two senses. The legislators, the youth, the Muslims, and I pick it up from somebody. Pinoy, President Aquino himself would be one segment. What is our message to Pinoy? Pinoy himself, Malacanang himself, would constitute probably one segment. What about the artists, the teachers? Third, so product, publics, and places. The geography of messaging. As I have mentioned, we will need a key message, but it really takes a lot of demands to explain the same message to the Lumats in Surigao, the Banuaons, and probably a differently shaped messaging if you're talking to the Tiduray, Sandulangan, Manobo inside the Bangsamoro, right? What about the women? Now, we will need a different packaging of the same message when we talk to the Ilonggos in Negros, which I think a good communication strategy should address the Ilonggos. For example, in Cotabato City, while Cardinal Quevedo is really all out for peace, dialogue, BBL, the rest of the Ilonggo diocesan clergy, not just the diocesan, but the rest of the local clergy, starting from the bishop, they have a different tone. And Zamboanga City is also crucial. The bishop there is not aligned with the campaign for BBL. No. So we need to be sensitive to the geography of messaging. And finally, and of course, Manila. Manila is a big, and Visayas, Manila would be a big segment in messaging. Finally, you need to produce materials for promotion. You need CDs. Suppose all the schools now, within the next month, would like to discuss Mamasapano. And we say, the problem is they don't understand. Suppose we want to make them understand rather than debate with them. And they say, okay, Paring Bert, can we invite Iya? You can, but there are 1,300 schools. You need a pool of explainers to address the questions that will be raised in Catholic schools forums. You need probably Lumad leaders who will be credible to the Lumads. Now, you also need faces. At least at this point, we need new faces. venture, nagpaalam na ako kay Jalia. I think, Jalia, whether you like it or else,
you have a good face. Nice face.
You'll be a good spokesperson for compassion, for peace. And we need people like you.
I need budget for my future.
That's right. So we will put in more budget. I don't know, to some extent, maybe Cardinal Tagle, Bishop Quevedo, we will need some ulama, or Father. We will need different explainers for different segments. Maybe Jalia can speak to, the Manila people in a way that some Manila women would not be able to do that, to do it. So we need a different kind of animal or spokesperson to deal with the lawyers and the legislators. Iba. Some of us are philosophically equipped to handle the law schools and the professors. Okay. In other words, we will need the whole package. Imagine in the concrete. So sabihin mo, what can we do? Okay, suppose we are able, yes. Suppose we are able to convince schools to devote 1.5 hours. What can they do? Suppose we can convince radio commentators and columnists to pay attention to this. They are asking for canned messages for radio. They are asking for data. So, and what about the preachings in the churches and the mosques, in the masjid? Can we synchronize and align our messages? So, in other words, I would like to call for a strategy to bridge the gap between track 1 and track 2. At the end of the day, whatever beautiful punctuations and terminologies we invent, for the sake of peace, God bless those who are in charge of that very difficult task. But it will be a sayang if these things are rejected simply because we fail to communicate effectively to the hearts of the people. Thank you very much.